For sure. And it has been quite the journey, I would say. I've been at T-Mobile almost 11 years. So it's really the tale of two different brands, to be quite honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
When I first started here, we were really focused heavily and aggressively on promotion and really just trying to keep the brand afloat while losing millions of customers every single year. So it was like a really challenging time for the brand. And I really came here with a vision that there's this brand that has massive opportunity because there's this powerful brand behind it. It had some loyal customers, yet we just weren't getting it at scale. And then through the past 8 years, we really pivoted how we think about the company and the brand. We've sort of taken on what we call the Uncarrier positioning versus, being like the other guys. We set out to change that trajectory. And in 8 years, we went from being number 4 to number 2 in terms of wireless subscribers in the marketplace. Now, of course, there were a few mergers along the way, but, growth in this industry that we were clearly losing, we've definitely found a way to pivot that. And it really is through marketing and through strong creative ideas in the marketplace.
Right. I mean, if the Uncarrier isn't one of the best examples of, right, like great ideas and great creative being able to move business and transform business, really, right?
What's so true about that, I mean, everybody thinks Uncarrier is like this strategy that just drives our creative. It was a philosophy that was driven throughout the entire organization. It was fundamentally a different way we had to work as a company across all divisions of the company, not just the marketing organization. Right. And it really forced us, because at the center of Uncarrier is the customer. And it's the maniacal obsession that we need to do what's right for our customers was a massive change in philosophy across the board, from how we serviced you when you called in to even how we marketed to you across the plate. We were respecting you as a customer and delivering you unique offerings that nobody else was doing at the time.
Yeah, and you found that kind of piece of magic that everyone could believe in, right? And you need that kind of internal philosophy, like you said, to kind of carry through.
It's so, really what it comes down to is it's just truths in marketing in general. And what we leaned into as a brand was finding those places that really were upsetting consumers in the marketplace, things that their pain points. And we started tackling pain points. And it took us a good 8 years to get through all of them. Yeah. And as we say today, and they're not over, there's more to come, but really it's focusing on what we heard. And it was what you heard from people. The one thing in our category, if people are calling you, your call centers, they're not calling to say, "Oh, gee, we love you as a brand." Right. They're calling you with problems.
Hey, you're doing a great job. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, keep doing what you're doing. They're not doing that. And really what it would force us to do is rethink how our whole service model, and we've revamped that. But it's also solving pain points, putting those propositions in front of consumers. And all of a sudden they go, yeah, you're right. I shouldn't have to be in a 2-year contract, or I should be able to upgrade my device when I want, or if I want unlimited, I should be able to get unlimited. So, I mean, it's a series of lots of things that we did. In fact, it was around 16 different Uncarrier moves that we launched over the past 8 years that really were more than just marketing efforts. It's really, I would say they were really strong creative ideas, which is always good because it makes it easy to bring strong ideas to the market.
Along. Yeah. Speaking of pain points, I mean, how did you see the evolution of the business and the brand throughout the pandemic, and how were you guys affected by that?
Well, it was a very interesting time, very challenging time when you're managing, a couple of different things. One, we merged with Sprint during the pandemic. In fact, our business closed, the merger closed on April 1st. Think about like uncanny timing on that. But one of the most important things was the wireless services were an essential business, which meant we had to find ways to service customers, whether it's in store, via, remote hookup, pickups and things like that. But it was our business last year was both challenging from an operational standpoint, but also fundamentally, it's been one of our best years that we've had as a business and a brand.
Wow.
Plus, layering on top of that a merger, which was very challenging, especially, you know, if you're working at a company, just think of company culture where you ingest 20, 30,000 employees into an organization and you've never met them or been able to look them eye to eye or sit next to them in a meeting and have conversations. It's been a challenge. I haven't met half my team yet. I'm looking very much forward to doing that here in the very near future. But, you know, it's been working remotely has put a toll. I think it's been a toll on all of us.
Yeah.
But especially when you just haven't had that ability to sit down and engage with team members.
Totally. I mean, I think the collaboration, right, and just the energy of other people being face to face. I mean, what else do you think you've missed out the most on not being face to face over the last year?
You know,
just as far as like even as far as like the creative product and the output.
Oh, for sure. Well, I'll give you some great examples. You know, number one, we're a highly collaborative culture. And, you know, we went from not even knowing how to do what's called a Zoom call today to having to be fully remote, like overnight. So you took part of our DNA away from us, meaning that ability to, you know, work an idea and just walk the halls and formulate ideas.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting. You know, just this week on Monday, I was able to get back with part of my one of my creative teams, and within 30 minutes, we'd come up with 10 different little ideas that we're going to go move on. So the lack of being able to just dialogue back and forth, and you don't have to schedule time, you can just have conversations. It's
like, wow, this is so productive.
We need to do this more often. We're trying to figure it out. It's really crazy.
Yeah, I definitely have felt that too, where the times when we have been able to be in person together, the amount that you get done in such a shorter amount of time too, right? It feels like over Zoom and over screen, it takes a lot longer to get to kind of the ideas or the outcome, just working like this, you know, because it's just hard to it's hard to engage in that way, right? Like our brains are kind of like programmed.
It's both that, but like I'm a very visual, lots of body language kind of individual. Yes. You can't get my body language when I'm writing an email to you because you're like losing some of that.
Yeah. Also, like hands in this situation just looks weird, right? You're like, what do I do with these?
It doesn't work at all. Yeah. But, you know, even through all of that, you know, I would say the teams found a way to utilize what we had, you know, via Zoom or via WebEx, whatever platforms you were using, found ways to still make the connections work because, you know, part of what we do is like, we can't make, you know, when you're sitting around an office, there's the work you do, but then there is just the personal conversations that you can have that were kind of being lost along the way. Yeah. And, you know, I, for one, was really trying to encourage my team to like, no, don't start a meeting with like the first business thing. Let's start a meeting saying, hey, how's everybody? What are you doing today? What'd you watch on TV last night? To just kind of break down some of those, you know, that wall, that barrier that we've all been facing. Yeah.
It kind of was just like, we had to try a little harder to engage, right? Because it wasn't, and I think there was, even to what you're saying too, there's just an inherent formality to screens and working like this, that like that felt like there was kind of extra pressure on the work or what, you know, what people are sharing and how they're sharing it, because it's just like, again, it just has this formality to it. Like everything is a presentation versus this is us just working together.
Everything's a presentation and everything has to be scheduled, because it's not like I can just lean over and ask somebody a question or walk down the hall and ask somebody a question. I had to put time on people's calendars. Which makes it inherently more formal of what it needed to be.
Right. Exactly. Taking all of that, where do you see the brand evolving and going from here, right? Like what's happening with Uncarrier? Is that still kind of the kind of center of gravity moving forward? And how does that evolve over
time? I mean, I think it's a really good question because, you know, the philosophy and the core of Uncarrier is going to still be the center of the brand, the focus on the customer and putting them first. How we've envisioned it and honestly, since we've merged with Sprint, one of the things that we've been able to gain is scale as a brand, and scale meaning our network is bigger and stronger than ever before. So now our job is to take that network and what before we were doing, how do we then expand it into broader categories? You're seeing things like we've emerged with a home internet product. That's just an example of where the brand wasn't able to play in the past, where because of our merger, we have much more scale, we're able to deploy new product offerings. And what you're going to see over the course of the next, call it 2 to 5 years, is really an explosion of use cases in and around 5G, which is really squarely our sweet spot for our business and our brand now, being the fact that we are the largest 5G network. We have more coverage in the United States, and we're deploying much more mid-band spectrum, which is the high-speed part of the in the tech. Put my engineering cap on for like 5 seconds because I am not an engineer at all. But when you start to deploy this higher speed internet, it's just going to open up so many more possibilities in the realm of healthcare and autonomous driving cars and things like drones. Like there's so much possibility that we're coming where, if LTE was the onslaught of apps dominating our ecosystems, because apps really weren't that prevalent. We're waiting to see, what's coming out of the garages across America that's going to be that next big platform for 5G. So it's very exciting.
Yeah. How do you see that then affecting the creative output and the work itself?
Well, from where we're really centered and where we've pivoted as a brand, I'll kind of put the brand hat on. We are spending, probably 50% of our efforts against more brand building efforts, because now that we have scale, we want to put that scale to use for good. And we're doing things like we've launched programs. Project 10 Million was a program that we had announced it pre-pandemic, but then we pulled it up at the beginning of the pandemic because one of the things that we saw were school-age kids needed more access to home internet, more broadband to do what we thought was the homework gap really became the schoolwork gap. And we wanted to step in as a brand and really help out. But that again, that is something in scale that we were able to go and achieve. And we leveraged it as a creative platform because, one of the things that we tried to do during the pandemic is not pander to the pandemic, but provide solutions that were relevant to the consumer for the pandemic. And Project 10 Million happened to be one of those products that we put into the marketplace, and it's a free service that we put into the marketplace for to really help close the gap. But it was a message that very much resonated because consumers, through all the testing that we did along the way, it was resounding like we were a company that was doing the right thing during the pandemic. I mean, I'll just be quite honest with you. So that was. And it's one of those places that we haven't traditionally played at the top of the brand with that. And then we talk a lot about our network. And, while we are the largest 5G network, by far, we're not the network. We don't have that share of mind of the consumer yet. And it's the job of, marketing to really help start to educate the consumer base on that. It's not to say that we also aren't continuing to do lower in the funnel demand gen type advertising. This is still one of the most competitive categories that you have out there. And it's even gotten more competitive it's gotten more aggressive along the way.
Yeah. I think there's, there's true value and importance in both sides of that line, right? The brand building work versus the kind of demand gen performance marketing. I even just said versus, but they shouldn't be versus, right? And I think the trick is always like, how do you still bring the brand through that entire funnel, right? And through that system, and how do you find balancing those things?
Everybody always, it's a great question, and it always comes to me. Well, we're just going to put, magenta. Magenta's our power color. Well, if we just put magenta in it, it's on brand. I'm like, gosh, I wish it was that easy. It's really not that easy. Like, it's really purposeful and thoughtful. and the way that we architect our messaging and the way we really think about it is, what's the consumer benefit and how are we going to articulate that benefit clearly and concisely to the consumer, because that's the most relevant.
Yeah.
And it's not always a price point. I'll be very honest with you. You know,
Yep.
typically everybody says, oh, it's free phones or it's a low cost rate plan. And yes, that's true some of the time, but, you know, we've also been successful. We launched a rate plan called Magenta Max. And believe it or not, it's one of our higher price rate plans, but it's packed with a fully unlimited, never slows you down. And we never priced it in the advertising. And it's been extremely successful in the marketplace because it met, again, a true need that consumers were looking for. And I think the pandemic may have brought a lot of focus to it, because I think we've all experienced glitchy connections on WebExes and things like that. And there's just been an increased demand and focus on wanting more capacity and higher speeds along the way across the board, be it your home internet practice or on a mobile devices today.
Yeah. Well, I think what's so, even just like, as you talked about the Magenta Max, right? And you think about, you know, the Uncarrier platform, it's very Uncarrier-like of you to not have a price point in work like that. That's so conventionally and traditionally, that is the formula.
And you're right, but the way we thought about it is, if you can market the features of what you were getting and make it compelling to the consumer, because everybody thinks an ad has to do everything. An ad, what we believe an ad has to do is open up a conversation and either get you to go to our website and experience it that way, or ultimately walk into a store. And, you know, this category is still, I mean, it's crazy to think that, you know, we're a technology sort of based business and most of the sales are still done within brick and mortar. It's crazy to think.
Yeah.
It's just,
there's an irony there for sure. Yeah.
It's the fact that we have 7,000 stores that sell T-Mobile and another 7,000 stores that sell Metro by T-Mobile. It's, you know, it's a large retail practice. I will say that very much.
That's amazing insight. And I think just really interesting to kind of like look at it through that ironic lens, right? That is the reality of it. Could you talk a little bit about the not Super Bowl spot and the story there?
Oh, gee, it's one of my favorite topics. And because, you know, so often people say, well, that was just a prank or a stunt that T-Mobile was trying to do. And, you know, one of the first things I have to say, and the spot for those of you in the audience that we're talking about, is we produced a spot with Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski for the Super Bowl. And the Thursday before the Super Bowl, it got denied air by the parties that be. And I'll just leave it at that. You all can figure out who denied us access to running it on the Super Bowl. But the most interesting comment about that is, and you know, I've been quoted at this before, it's like, if you get Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski, you're creating a Super Bowl spot that's going to run on the Super Bowl. Now, granted, we did not know at the time when we filmed the spot they were actually going to the Super Bowl, but boy, we got really excited as the Super Bowl got closer that they were there. But, you know, come Thursday afternoon, when we finally got final rejection for the spot, we met as a core team across both the marketing team and our corporate communications team. And we said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to create a Super Bowl moment with this spot. We're going to go get that 100 million views of the spot one way or another. And we started with the spot airing on the Today Show on Friday morning. So we started the journey there. And then working with other partners in the digital space, we were able to garner just under 130 million views of the spot. Well, we had 30 million views of the spot before the game ever aired. And then at post Super Bowl and, you know, the trailing week after the Super Bowl, the spot ultimately then got to 130 million views externally. So we sort of achieved that. Plus, I'll be honest with you, I'm not even factoring in, I think there was over 450 stories that were written about this because the spot not airing on it. So we got incremental ink on this as well.
Yeah.
Now, we did also have two other spots that ran in the game, and they both had equal comments. We had one with Gwen Stefani and Blake Shelton telling their story as how they ultimately got hooked up by Adam Levine, even though that was a creative story by us. But that also got over 50 million views through consumers. So, the Super Bowl, it's interesting. Didn't ask the question, but it's kind of within our mindset is you have to play the Super Bowl for the eyes on the game, and then you have to play the Super Bowl for the eyes that you can garner before and after the game.
Yeah.
Build an ecosystem all together, because that is really how you play. And we were able as a telco to get in the telco space, in the social channels, we had over 79% of all the conversations related on the game were about T-Mobile and spots.
Yeah, I mean, that is such a good point, right? It's like Super Bowl spots are no longer just Super Bowl spots, right? They're as much the pre and the post and how you're scaling and amplifying around it as it is the actual spot that's airing during the game. Yeah.
It's almost, the game is important, but it's like the surround sound you create because of it is why it's important to play. I mean, it's not for every brand. I mean, we use it because we're able to amplify big messages. I mean, it was a great platform for getting our network message, into the marketplace.
Yeah, that kind of leads into the next question I was going to ask you, what kind of is your take on the role of creativity and media? And I think Jason had thrown a question in here that feels connected to this. But, T-Mobile has been at the cutting edge of ad formats, right? 6-second ad that premiered in the World Series in 2017, right, which was a huge success. Like, how can you speak to that importance of kind of specific distribution, but also just like creativity and media in general?
For sure. So, I mean, it's interesting. My title is Chief Creative Officer of T-Mobile, but I also have the media team that sits within my organization. And why that's important is the way that we think of media today is not the way it was when I started my career. I'll tell you that much. Because creative ideas, like the 6-second idea, was like a challenge. It's a creative challenge that you put out there, and you have to balance it. But the media team brought forth, what creative director sitting at an agency today is saying, gee, I want to go create a 6-second spot to run? Like, that's just not happening.
Yeah.
And what I love about the cross-pollination of teams is that you were able to actually get much more out of your creative product when your media team is sitting side by side with you, because you can think differently about it. And the way that we think about it is we drive integrations within shows. So it's an extension of our marketing and our advertising, but it goes within the actual creative content, and we're working closely with either networks or content creators to actually bridge that gap. But, it's also working with media partners and coming up with what are the breakthrough ideas that then you put creative top spin on top of that actually elevates ideas. And, we do a ton in the radio space of just thinking very differently and challenging our partners, even through our DJ. We work with DJs all across America for live DJ reads, which a lot of brands are like, oh, well, we're not sure what you're going to get. But I'm like, but if you brief really well, like you have like ideas and you then trust them, you're going to get better interaction, because it's much more organic. Because if you think about the original influencers in local markets, they're the radio DJs, and they're still out there today.
Yeah. I think I completely agree with all of that. I think the role that creativity has within media is just as important as it does the ideas, right? And I think we can continue to push ourselves as an industry and within the work on how we can approach media in even more creative ways, right? And thinking about it through the same lens as we do creating the actual work itself.
1,000% right. I mean, because again, creative people, the way the creative brains work is, they take on a challenge and they think about it. If presented like unique media opportunities, and this is where like you present it as what it is, and you give people time to go and think about it, and just cycle through the creative process. That's where I think you get magic can sort of happen. It goes beyond just what your ad would be in that placement. It really makes it much more of an event type of an idea.
Yeah. What are we've kind of touched on like the how the brand has evolved throughout the pandemic. What are you most excited for obviously T-Mobile, but also brands in general and creativity coming coming out of the pandemic? What kind of gets you the most excited?
Well, I am hoping we're now going to get back to some great storytelling and reinvigoration of, I always, we're a brand that loves humor, and we've had to kind of tread water gently with how you use humor to bring it into the marketplace. But I also think there's this powerful integration that we can now do, that it's not one story, it's all the stories you tell, that you can weave the magenta thread, as I like to put it, through each place and each touch point where we talk to consumers. Because, the more that I keep trying to really, talk with the broader marketing organization here at T-Mobile, is I shouldn't have to tell the entire story in one single, call it 30-second spot.
Right.
It's the surround sound that you're able to create. It's how you pull them through the digital ecosystem. Yep. It's what you talk about on radio. It's what they see visually on a billboard or in the front of store, or how you engage them, even in narrative, when they're calling you on the phone. How do you put the whole journey together? Not just, it doesn't stop with just one piece of creative. And I think that excites me. And that's the one thing that most brands, and it's all brands have the opportunity to do that. It's not just what we do here, because I'm probably leaving out social, and I didn't mean to do that, because I kind of think of social in the digital footprint, but social becomes just another way. To me, it's the engagement platform that you also have to leverage along the way.
It is amazing, right? We have more channels and more ways in which to tell our brand stories than ever, right? And it continues to grow and evolve, but it is amazing that there are some times and some brands that still tend to want to pack everything in the one piece, versus looking at the entire ecosystem and how you build the brand differently in those different places, and what levers to pull on, and what messaging to focus on. What's the brand building? What's the performance marketing message?
For sure. And, when you think about it, consumers today, put our consumer hats on, I'm one brand of millions of brands now, and everybody's out there bombarding you in more and more and more and more places. How do you break through in that environment? I think sometimes is the simpler the message, so it's easier to understand, and just the multiple placements that you have and the frequency, but it's not frequency just in one channel, it's across multiple channels. Speaking
of that, there is a question that's related to this, because I think that then does get into a place of, from a budget perspective, right? How do you kind of balance that? So the question in here is, many brands have had to drastically reduce their media budgets. How has your media plan adjusted? If your budget has been reduced, have you gotten more creative and efficient with those strategies? Maybe it's kind of building on what we were just talking about, but are there specific things that you can point to regarding that? And, how do you approach emerging media channels as they come? And how do you figure out what's worth investing in?
For sure. So let's tackle the first one. So I would say we, like all brands experience, we reduced budget for a couple of reasons. One, there wasn't inventory to buy. The eyeballs have kind of gone away a little bit. So that impacted, where and when we were placing media. So we did see a reduction there. That said, the media that we preserved, we leveraged it completely, from traditional TV through digital, through radio, because at the end of the day, we were still marketing a product that consumers had high demand by consumers. So it was really important that we kept it there. Now, as we look at, we are constantly evaluating new and emerging channels from a traditional media perspective. And, we are shifting a little bit of our mindset to audience buying, meaning, very discrete audiences that then can make up a larger target segment. Yeah. But by segmenting, we're able to then be much more specific about how we target specific products and services. For example, if I'm marketing to a 55 plus audience, I have the ability to go by 55 plus in a much more discreet fashion. In fact, I was talking to somebody that didn't even know we offered a 55 plus plan. I'm like, well, why would you? You're 25 years old. Right. I'd be wasting my money if I was marketing it to you. But you know, clearly you have to expand and learn, but you also have to like be mindful of what works on the platform. Like when we jumped into a TikTok, and you know, we don't aggressively use TikTok, but we're emerging in TikTok. But you have to follow their format, and you have to work with the people that are more endemic to that platform. And it's how we've approached almost all the platforms that we've ever done. But you know, we're constantly evaluating, you know, what is the next turn for us marketers, and where are we going to go? And we've always said we would rather try it out, and if it works, awesome, and if it fails, move on. Like it's kind of like our philosophy. Don't wait for others to try it out and then be late to the game. We'd rather get early and fail first, or be first to market with new platforms.
I like fail first. You know, you hear fail fast a lot, but I like fail first and fast. And keep
fail first, fast, and move on, and don't tell anybody.
Yeah, and keep it to yourself. The next question on here was, so working from home, and I think we touched a little bit on this earlier, but like working from home and distancing obviously have altered the way that, you know, consumers even consume media and digital habits in so many ways. What are you seeing when it comes to those types of behavioral changes, and how consumers are adapting, and then how you're adapting the brand and the marketing with it?
Well, the onslaught of online video has become extremely more prevalent than ever before. And when I say that, it's all across the board, via how you market within the streaming services that are evolving and coming out today. But it's also more traditional online video with the YouTubes of the world, being sure that you're present there. I mean, we've always been present there. I mean, that's nothing new to us. But it's also using the social channels and making them much more relevant, and in how you use them from a brand perspective and from an executive perspective. It's like, how does your brand show up in the social channels is not just a one note anymore. And, you know, again, constantly staying close to, you know, we kind of say, follow the eyeballs. Let's make sure that we're there. And for those of you on broadcast television, traditional television, that's not going away. Nobody's saying that's going away. And I don't think they think it's going away either. I think it's like, but how you craft that audience, you have to just be a little bit more bespoke in how we put it all together. And it's our jobs as marketers to help put it all together. Consumers shouldn't have to do it, because, you know, right now, consumers are more confused than ever. For where do I go find their content? So we have to make sure that where they find it, we're there for them with our brand. Yeah,
for sure. Speak back to the kind of, not back to, but you already kind of shared the fail first, which is nice. Is there any other advice that you would now, like looking back, give to your younger self, both personally and professionally?
For sure. As I think about this, you know, one of the things as I started my career, and I'm not going to tell you how long ago it was, but it was a while ago, I was just heads down. I'm going to focus on doing one thing. I wanted to be a great AE, get promoted. What I learned a little bit later in my career is sometimes, instead of just being so myopically focused on one thing, maybe I should just go step to the left or to the right and try something a little bit different. Give me a little bit broader exposure into a different side of marketing. It could have been PR, you know, today it could be social. Even though my main focus is I always want to come back to a goal, I think that's what makes us better leaders and actually better marketers. And I will say I had the privilege to do that later on as I evolved in my career, but it was not how I started. And if I could go back and do it again, I would have started doing that much earlier in my career than waiting to sort of mid-career to start to say, gee, I should go look at what sponsorships mean. Like we have to keep our minds open as we do that, because marketing is, the capital M in marketing is a big pond that we should all experience as much as you possibly can. Because today, as leaders, you know, as a leader now of a, you know, a large brand, I can dip into like all these various experiences, you know, how to put on a live event, how to create for social channels, how to put what's the most effective way to get a store poster put together. If I would have thought that that's where my career was going to be right now, to where I was as an AE and an agency back, you know, many years ago, never would have thought that. But I wish I would have thought about it before by middle of my career.
Yeah, I'm sure your younger self would be looking at you now being like, nicely done.
Somehow I navigated the waters.
Yeah.
And, the only other thing I would say also is just always remember from a personal standpoint is, we're the CEOs of our careers and we shape them ourselves today. And we should never stop learning, and we should never stop wanting to experience new and different things, because we're in the renaissance of our industry right now.
Yes.
And I think it's just fantastic that, creativity can be applied in ways that I don't think we ever imagined 10 years ago.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because I feel like there's been lots of conversations around this like creative renaissance, right? I think we're all just kind of ready to burst out of the last year and a half, and what that looks like we don't know, but there's this energy and excitement about the work that's going to come from this. And I think there's a bit of responsibility, and not a bit, there's a lot of responsibility we have, to your point, as leaders, but also just as an industry, to deliver on that and make a real impact and solve real problems through creativity. And I think, that's what's super exciting to me about kind of what's to come, especially in, taking all of the learnings that we've gotten through the last year and a half and using them to be better and do better.
For sure. Like I said, I think creative renaissance is the right way to think about it. And it's amazing that, it's the balance as brands. We balance doing good, because that's really important in the modern day world of marketing.
Yep.
But it's also, we have to still be able to be strong brand and marketers that generate business for the company.
Exactly. Hi, Jason.
Hello. I feel bad interrupting this conversation. I feel like the two of you can go on for probably another hour on the renaissance of creative marketing, which is so true. Yes, the time does fly when we're having fun. And thank you very much, Peter, for sharing some of your time with us today. And Lisa, all the best in your new role at Ogilvy. Obviously, a very exciting time. And this was a great session. We should be doing this one again for sure. So thank you to both of you for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us, Jason.
You got it. Thank you. Fantastic. All right, Brand Innovators community, we are fast approaching our next session here. And just wanted to reintroduce myself to those who are maybe just joining us now. My name is Jason Edelman, Vice President of Brand Strategy and Partnership Development at Brand Innovators. I have the great fortune of working with a lot of the senior marketers that are part of our Innovation Advisory Council. My team advises them on marketing and advertising technology and uncovering the latest emerging and startup solution providers to help them achieve their goals and objectives. If you're interested in learning more about how to getting involved in one of our councils, please email us or feel free to link in with me. Now we are privileged to be joined by a real big friend of Brand Innovators. Todd Kaplan is always gracious with his time and definitely on the forefront of advertising and marketing. Definitely one who has his finger on the pulse always, and we're always privileged to hear from him. And he's going to provide a keynote now on returning the pop to culture. Hey, Todd, how you doing?
Doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I don't think I ever heard you share what your favorite Pepsi flavor or brand is.
Oh boy. It's got to be right now. We just came out with a Pepsi Mango. I have one actually right here. Pepsi
Amazing.
Mango. Oh, see, it's invisible with the background now, but Pepsi Mango Zero Sugar right now is that's my go-to these days. So there you go.
Excellent. Wonderful. Great. Cool. So I'm going to turn the mic over to you. And then after you're done, we'll be joined by Jim McLeod at Odyssey for a little fireside and Q&A. So thanks, Todd.
Cool. All right. Thank you. I'll just share my screen here. All right. Can you guys see this? Yep. We're good.